We have reached the end of the season, and we are now into real life football playoffs and watching guys like Terry McLaurin do way better in the playoffs than he did for you in your fantasy football championship game. And you're bitter and grouchy about it. But there's something that we can do about this to make sure that our teams are even better for next season. Here's 4 moves that I like to make every single offseason in order to get me ready and get ahead of my competition. Number 1, we are starting to scout this rookie class. Yes, I know that the NFL draft is still months away, and we're not going to have our final rankings and tiers done until after the draft. That being said, it's really good to know how you feel about these players independently of their draft landing spot, because sometimes you'll have players that go to famously good landing spots, a la Clyde Edwards-Helaire, that gets artificially moved up the board. You get players that are put into what are considered terrible landing spots. Remember Jackson Smith and Jigba, AJ Brown, guys like that just end up being ballers because they're really good players. So sometimes it's good to know how you feel about players independently of where they land and who they're going to, what draft pick they've been selected with, all of those things. Just good to know how you feel about that player. So start your scouting process now, whether that is in the form of tape, whether you're doing analytical models, whatever it is that you do, start doing that now before the NFL draft so you have something to compare it to. The next thing I do is I'm trying to position my picks in order to capitalize the most on this class. So once I've started scouting, I'm going to start to notice tier gaps and things like that. So that's going to help me make trades. And plus, I know things like, well, top 4 picks, they have over a 70% hit rate for fantasy football and an 83% chance to at least be usable. Whereas everything else from pick 5 all the way through 12 has below a 50% hit rate. So if that's the case, I want to take multiple of those low round picks and maybe try to move up a little bit in my draft to get me to top 4. Now, maybe you have pick 6 and 8 and you're saying, man, I can't get into the top 4. Nobody's budging. Nobody will move. That's okay. Trade down then. Give yourself an opportunity to get 3 picks in that range instead of just 2, and you'll increase your odds of being able to hit on those players. The third thing that is a good idea to really look into this time of year, it is capitalizing on the seasonality of trading. If you remember, just 2 months ago, guys like Joe Mixon, Derrick Henry, Saquon Barkley, Jonathan Taylor, and even wide receivers like Mike Evans and Cooper Kupp were going for quite a bit. Now, if you look at it, those guys are worth nothing to most of their owners. I know, yes, Saquon Barkley and Jonathan Taylor maybe still have a little bit more value than some of those other guys, but overall, those guys have dropped a ton in value right now because what is everybody looking at? The incoming class. This is the time of year when you can start looking at maybe trading some of those picks for proven assets, especially if you are a contending team. It's the perfect time to go out and get maybe a little bit older, sure, but if you win that title, it's much better than having some rookie that's only getting you 10 points per game on your bench. Last thing I think is an expert move in the offseason is I'm scouring my waiver wire. Now, most deep dynasty leagues, there's not a lot out there. But what I'm looking is to see how many wide receivers do I have? Am I a team that's sitting there with 12 wide receivers and a lot of them at the end are guys that aren't awful, but just are never going to likely crack my starting lineup? Think of names like Josh Palmer, Olamide Zaccheaus, Calvin Austin, Demarcus Robinson. Not bad players, and could they have weeks here and there where they put up some good games? Absolutely. They've all done it. But when are you going to be able to trust that you can put that player into your lineup? Never. Unless you are a fortune teller and can see the future, you never know when the right week to put those players in your starting lineup are. So instead of having 12 wide receivers on your team, look to cut it down to 7, 8 wide receivers and go look more at the quarterback and the running back position. The reason I'm highlighting these two is these are positions where you'll know when you have value on that player. Yeah, somebody could be a third receiver and have a big week, but you're not going to know when to play him. However, if somebody gets hurt, you know exactly when to start that running back because they're supposed to be the lead running back that week. Then you can either capitalize and start them or trade them for value. Same thing with the quarterback position, especially in superflex leagues. Those backup quarterbacks can gain huge value. And just look at a lot of guys that recently were backups. Sam Darnold, Baker Mayfield, Geno Smith, all of these guys, recent backups, now starters. Baker Mayfield just finished as the 4th overall quarterback in fantasy football this year. So I would go out there, get rid of a lot of those lower tier wide receivers that I'm never going to know when to start, and look at the backup quarterback and the backup running back positions and fill my roster there.